hills of Northern California, came alive on June 12, 1998. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and pine, and the summer sun cast a golden haze over the cobblestone streets. At the heart of the excitement was Emily Harper, a 24-year-old schoolteacher whose warm smile and gentle demeanor had won the town's affection. Today was her wedding day, a moment she had dreamed of since childhood. Her groom, Daniel Vance, a 27-year-old mechanic with a quick wit and a disarming charm, stood as her perfect matcher, so it seemed. The ceremony unfolded in a meadow just beyond the town's limits, where a wooden arch draped in white roses framed the couple against a backdrop of rolling green hills. Guests clad in pastel dresses and crisp suits fanned themselves under the warm sky, their whispers filled with admiration for the couple's radiant love. Emily's gown, a delicate blend of lace and silk, flowed like a cascade of moonlight, catching the light with every step. Daniel, in a tailored black tuxedo, exuded confidence, his eyes locked on Emily as they exchanged vows. The words they spoke were simple yet heartfelt, promising a lifetime of devotion. The crowd erupted in applause as they sealed their union. With a kiss, the moment etched in the collective memory of Willow Creek. The reception followed at the Willow Creek Community Hall, a rustic building transformed into a wonderland of twinkling fairy lights, ivory linens, and crystal centerpieces. Tables groaned under platters of roasted chicken, fresh salads, and tiered cakes adorned with sugared roses. Music pulsed through the air, a mix of classic love ballads and upbeat dance tunes. As guests spilled onto the wooden dance floor, Emily and Daniel led the first dance, their movements graceful and effortless. Her laughter rang out, bright and infectious, as he spun her under the soft glow of chandeliers. Friends toasted their happiness, clinking glasses of sparkling cider and champagne. The night stretched on, filled with joy and celebration. As children chased each other through the hall, and elderly couples swayed to the music. To every onlooker, the day was flawless, a fairy tale brought to life. But beneath the surface, unseen tension simmered. Daniel, raised in a strict religious household on the outskirts of town, clung to rigid beliefs about marriage and purity. His father, a stern preacher, had instilled in him the idea that a wife must be unblemished, a vessel of virtue. Emily, by contrast, was a free spirit, her life shaped by a love of adventure and a quiet rebellion against small-town norms. Emily's mother, Grace Harper, a nurse who had raised her alone, watched the wedding with a mix of pride and unease. She knew her daughter's independent streak, her summers spent backpacking. Her journals filled with poetry about freedom had clashed with Daniel's traditional views. Grace had once overheard Daniel question Emily about her past, his tone sharp and probing, but Emily had brushed it off with a laugh. The town, too, had its whispers. Older residents, steeped in Willow Creek's conservative roots, had raised eyebrows at Emily's modern ways. Her short skirts, her trips to San Francisco, her outspoken views on women's rights. Daniel, seen as a pillar of tradition, was there. Golden Boy, a man who attended church every Sunday and spoke of building a family. Their union had puzzled some, but most chalked it up to the magic of opposites attracting. As the reception wound down, Emily and Daniel slipped away, their car, adorned with tin cans and a just married sign, trailing behind. They drove to the Rosewood Inn, a quaint bed and breakfast nestled among ancient oaks, its ivy-covered walls glowing under the moonlight. The suite reserved for them was a vision of romance. A four-poster bed scattered with rose petals, a fireplace casting a warm glow, and a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. The innkeeper, a kindly woman named Margaret, handed them the key with a wink, wishing them a night of bliss. As the door closed behind them, Willow Creek settled into silence, unaware that the perfect day was about to descend into darkness. Emily's past, carefully guarded, and Daniel's unyielding ideals were on a collision course, one that would shatter the town's idyllic facade. The seeds of tragedy had been sown long before the wedding bells rang. Emily had always been a dreamer. Her classroom at Willow Creek Elementary, a haven of creativity where students painted murals and wrote stories. But her private life held secrets she kept locked away, even from those closest to her. All his charm carried a shadow, a need for control that few had glimpsed. His co-workers at the auto shop knew his temper, though they rarely spoke of it. His mother, a devout woman who rarely left her home, had raised him with an iron grip, her teachings shaping his worldview. As the newlyweds stepped into their suite, the weight of these unspoken truths hung heavy, a storm brewing in the quiet of the night. The Rosewood Inn was a sanctuary of charm, its creaking floors and antique furnishings steeped in history. Emily and Daniel's honeymoon suite, on the second floor, was the inn's crown jewel, with a balcony overlooking the gardens and a clawfoot tub gleaming in the bathroom. Rose petals dotted the bedspread, and the faint scent of lavender lingered in the air. The champagne, nestled in ice, promised a toast to their new life. But within hours, the room transformed from a haven of love to a crime scene that would haunt Willow Creek for decades. At 3:17 a.m., a guest in the room below jolted awake to a piercing scream. Heart-pounding, she dialed 911, her voice trembling as she reported the sound of a struggle. Police cars screeched into the inn's gravel driveway minutes later. There, red and blue lights cutting through the pre-dawn mist, officers entered the suite to find a scene of horror. Emily lay sprawled across the bed, her white gown soaked in blood, the crimson stark against the pale fabric. A single stab wound marred her chest, the precision of it chilling in its simplicity. Her eyes, wide and glassy, stared at the ceiling, frozen in a moment of terror. Blood had pooled beneath her, seeping into the mattress, while the rose petals lay scattered, some crushed underfoot. Daniel sat in an armchair in the corner, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he clutched a glass of water. His tuxedo jacket was slung over a chair, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing no visible injuries. When officers approached, he muttered that he had lost control, his voice hollow, almost mechanical. Investigators moved swiftly, sealing the room and calling in a forensic team. The murder weapon, a kitchen knife from the inn's dining set, lay on the floor near the bed, its blade glinting under the soft glow of a bedside lamp. The handle bore smudges, later confirmed as Daniel's fingerprints. His initial statement to police was a confession of sorts, delivered in a monotone that unnerved the officers. He claimed that during an intimate moment, he discovered Emily. Was not a virgin a revelation that shattered his expectations? He said she had hidden this from him throughout their 18-month courtship, presenting herself as pure to align with his values. The discovery, he insisted, sparked an argument that spiraled into rage. In a moment of blind fury, he grabbed the knife and struck her, only realizing the gravity of his actions when it was too late. The story aligned with Daniel's upbringing, rooted in a family where purity was paramount. His father's sermons had often railed against modern immorality, and Daniel had echoed these views, once telling a friend that a wife's virtue was non-negotiable. To detectives, the motive seemed plausible at first, crime of passion driven by cultural shock, but cracks appeared in his account. His demeanor was too composed, his words too carefully chosen, as if rehearsed. The knife's placement, discarded yet clean of blood, suggested care rather than chaos. Emily's body showed no defensive wounds, no scratches or bruises on her arms, which would have been expected in a heated struggle. Daniel's hands and face were unmarked, further undermining his claim of a frenzied attack. The coroner's preliminary report deepened the mystery. The stab wound was precise, penetrating Emily's heart with a single thrust, suggesting skill or deliberation. The lack of additional injuries pointed to a controlled act, not a passionate outburst. Detectives began to question the timeline. Daniel said the argument erupted around 2:30 a.m., but the 911 call came nearly an hour later. What had happened in that gap? The inn's night clerk reported hearing no loud noises until the scream, suggesting the confrontation was quieter than Daniel described. Investigators turned their attention to the couple's relationship, seeking clues in their past. Best friend Clara revealed Daniel's jealousy, recalling how he once snapped when Emily hugged a male coworker at a school event. A neighbor mentioned Daniel's late-night walks, silhouette pacing the street as if wrestling with unseen burdens. The town buzzed with shock and speculation. As Emily's students left flowers outside the school, their notes scrawled with messages of love. Older residents whispered about her wild youth, hinting at secrets that might have provoked Daniel. The police, however, sensed the case was more complex than a lover's quarrel. Daniel's story, while compelling, felt like a script designed to fit the narrative of a betrayed husband. As forensic teams combed the suite, a faint bruise on Emily's wrist, overlooked in the chaos, caught their eye. It was older than the fatal wound, suggesting restraint hours before her death. This discovery shifted the investigation, hinting at a darker truth, one that Daniel's confession couldn't explain. Detectives expected Emily's life to be an open book, the story of a small-town teacher with a heart of gold. Instead, they uncovered a tapestry of secrets that complicated the case. Emily had grown up in Willow Creek, the only child of Grace Harper, a single mother who worked grueling shifts at the local hospital. Her childhood was modest, her home a small cottage filled with books and dreams. As a teenager, Emily embraced a quiet rebellion, sneaking out to music festivals in nearby towns, her backpack stuffed with sketch pads and journals. She dated boys her mother disapproved of, drawn to their free spirits and wanderlust. At 19, she fell hard for Ryan Keller, a 22-year-old drifter who worked as a handyman in Willow Creek. Their romance was a whirlwind, marked by late-night drives and promises of a life beyond the town's borders. What few knew was that Emily became pregnant during their relationship. Terrified and unprepared, she chose to terminate the pregnancy, a decision she made alone in a clinic 2 towns over. The experience left her shaken, her journals from that time filled with guilt and grief. She never told Grace, fearing her mother's disappointment, nor did she confide in friends. Ryan left town shortly after, unaware of the pregnancy there. Breakup abrupt and painful. Letters found in a shoebox under Emily's bed revealed the depth of her heartbreak. In one, she pleaded with Ryan to stay, her words raw with desperation. Another, written months later, spoke of her resolve to move forward, to bury the past, and build a new life. The letters stopped, their edges worn from years of rereading. Detectives tracked down Ryan, now 29 and living in a small Oregon town, working as a carpenter, confirmed the relationship but claimed he hadn't spoken to Emily since leaving Willow Creek. His demeanor was guarded, his answers vague, raising suspicions. Had he harbored resentment, or had Emily reached out to him before the wedding? Investigation widened, uncovering rumors that Daniel had heard whispers of Emily's past. A bartender at the local pub recalled Daniel asking about Ryan months before the engagement, his tone casual, but his eyes intense. The possibility that Daniel knew more than he admitted added a new layer to the case. Was his rage truly sparked by a wedding night discovery, or had he been nursing a grudge? Daniel's own history came under scrutiny. Born into a devout family, he had grown up under the shadow of his father's fire and brimstone sermons. His mother, Eleanor, was a reclusive woman who rarely left their isolated farmhouse. Co-workers at the auto shop described Daniel as hard-working, but volatile, prone to sudden outbursts. Once, when a customer criticized his work, he shattered. A wrench against a wall, his face flushed with anger. A former girlfriend, Sarah, painted a troubling picture. She described Daniel's need for control, how he demanded access to her phone and grew furious when she spoke to other men. Their relationship ended when she moved away, unable to bear his jealousy. Sarah's account suggested a man whose traditional values masked a darker obsession, one that could turn deadly. Emily's journal, found in her classroom desk, offered a glimpse into her final months. Entries described her love for Daniel, but hinted at unease. She wrote of his probing questions about her past, his insistence on knowing every detail of her previous relationships. One entry, dated 2 weeks before the wedding, read, "He keeps asking about my life before him. I'm scared he'll never forgive me if he finds out." The vagueness frustrated detectives. Was she referring to her pregnancy, Ryan, or something else? Clara, her best friend, recalled Emily's nervousness before the wedding, her hesitation to share details. The town, meanwhile, was divided. Some saw Emily as a victim of Daniel's rigid expectations, while others whispered that her secrets had invited trouble. The case grew murkier, a puzzle with missing pieces. Pointing to a motive that went beyond betrayal, the investigation uncovered another thread. A series of anonymous letters sent to Daniel's workplace in the months before the wedding. The letters, typed and unsigned, hinted at Emily's wild past, urging him to see her true colors. The police suspected someone in Willow Creek was stirring the pot, but the letters yielded no fingerprints or DNA. The question lingered: had Daniel acted on these rumors, or was he the orchestrator of a larger plan? The tangled pasts of Emily and Daniel revealed a relationship built on fragile trust, where love was overshadowed by suspicion. As detectives sifted through the evidence, they sensed the truth was buried deeper, waiting to be unearthed. Forensic evidence began to reshape the narrative, casting doubt on Daniel's claim of a spontaneous crime. The kitchen knife, though bearing his fingerprints, was curiously clean of blood, as if wiped down after the attack. The blade's edge was sharp, the wound it inflicted precise, suggesting a deliberate act rather than a frenzied one. A faint bruise on Emily's wrist, missed in the initial chaos, was documented during the autopsy. The mark, older than the fatal wound, indicated she had been restrained hours before her death, contradicting Daniel's story of a sudden argument. Detectives revisited the crime scene, combing the suite for overlooked clues. The rose petals, scattered across the bed, showed signs of disturbance, some crushed as if stepped on during a struggle. A single petal, caught in the balcony railing, fluttered in the breeze. Its significance unclear but haunting. A maid at the Rosewood Inn, a nervous woman named Linda, provided a critical lead. She recalled seeing Daniel leave the suite around midnight, carrying a small black bag, his expression calm and purposeful. He returned an hour later, the bag still in hand, and slipped back into the room without a word. When pressed, Linda admitted she found his demeanor had not the behavior of a man reeling from a fight. A search of the inn's dumpster conducted. Days later uncovered the bag, discarded among kitchen scraps. Inside was an empty bottle of sedatives, prescribed to Daniel's mother, Eleanor, for anxiety. The label showed a recent refill, dated 2 days before the wedding. Toxicology reports confirmed traces of the sedative in Emily's system, enough to render her drowsy and unable to resist. This revelation turned the case on its head. The murder was not a crime of passion, but a calculated act, planned with chilling precision. Detectives hypothesized that Daniel had slipped the sedative into Emily's champagne during the reception, perhaps in a private toast. The drug's slow onset would have left her vulnerable by the time they reached the suite. The midnight errand suggested he had retrieved the knife or disposed of other evidence. A search of Daniel's car uncovered a pharmacy receipt confirming he had refilled his mother's prescription days before the wedding, a detail he never mentioned. The receipt, crumpled in the glove compartment, was a damning link to the sedatives. Investigators questioned Eleanor, who claimed she hadn't needed the medication in months, unaware her son had accessed her supply. Her frail demeanor and confusion raised no red flags, but her son's actions pointed to premeditation. The investigation deepened, exploring Daniel's behavior in the days leading up to the wedding. Phone records showed late-night calls to an unknown number, later traced to a burner phone that was never recovered. A neighbor reported seeing Daniel pacing in his backyard the night before the ceremony, his silhouette illuminated by moonlight as he muttered to himself. These fragments painted a picture of a man wrestling with a plan, not a sudden betrayal. Another piece of evidence puzzled detectives. A single rose petal, found in Daniel's jacket pocket, didn't match those in the suite. It came from a rare strain, Crimson Glory, grown only at a local florist named Petals and Stems. The shop's owner confirmed Daniel had visited days earlier, requesting something special for the wedding. The petal's presence suggested a ritualistic element, as if Daniel had marked the moment with a symbol of his own making. Forensic analysis of the suite revealed faint traces of cleaning fluid on the knife handle, suggesting an attempt to erase evidence. The absence of Emily's fingerprints on the weapon further undermined Daniel's claim of a struggle. A blood spatter expert noted the spray pattern on the bed, indicating Emily was lying down when struck, likely incapacitated by the sedative. The bruise on her wrist, paired with the drug's presence, pointed to a prolonged act of control, not a fleeting outburst. Detectives began to see Daniel as a man who had orchestrated every detail, from the sedative to the knife, to ensure Emily's silence. But why? Was her past truly the trigger, or was it a convenient excuse for a deeper obsession? The anonymous letters resurfaced as a point of intrigue. Handwriting experts confirmed they were typed on an old typewriter, possibly from the town library, but no witnesses recalled seeing Daniel there. The letters' tone vague, yet provocative, suggested someone with intimate knowledge of Emily's past. Detectives wondered if Daniel had written them himself, planting seeds of doubt to justify his actions. The hidden evidence painted a portrait of a man whose charm masked a calculating mind, one that had planned Emily's death with meticulous care. As the investigation closed in, the truth seemed tantalizingly close. Yet one final twist awaited. The trial of Daniel Vance gripped Willow Creek, transforming the courthouse into a stage for justice. Crowds gathered daily, their faces a mix of grief and outrage. Prosecutors built a compelling case, weaving together the forensic evidence, the sedative, and the pharmacy receipt to argue that Daniel had planned Emily's murder to punish her for her past. The rose petal, the cleaned knife, and the bruise on Emily's wrist painted a picture of cold calculation, not passion. The defense countered with a plea of temporary insanity, claiming Daniel's strict upbringing had left him unable to cope with Emily's secret. They called psychologists who spoke of cultural shock, describing how his father's teachings had warped his view of love. But the jury, their faces stern, seemed unconvinced. Their eyes fixed on the photos of Emily's lifeless body. The town was a cauldron of emotion. Emily's students, too young to grasp the trial's complexity, left drawings outside the courthouse, their crayons depicting her smiling under a rainbow. Grace Harper sat in the front row, her face etched with pain, clutching a locket that held Emily's photo. Daniel's mother Eleanor attended sparingly, her frail form dwarfed by the courtroom's grandeur. Whispers followed her, some pitying her loss, others blaming her for raising a monster. The anonymous letters became a focal point, with prosecutors suggesting Daniel had fabricated them to bolster his narrative. The defense argued they proved Emily's deception, stoking Daniel's rage. The truth remained elusive, the typewriters. Origin, a dead end. Days before the verdict, a bombshell dropped. Ryan Keller, Emily's ex, reappeared, claiming he had been in Willow Creek the week of the wedding. A gas station receipt placed him just 3 miles from the Rosewood Inn on the night of the murder, fueling speculation. An email from Emily to Ryan, uncovered in a digital forensic sweep, sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Sent 3 days before the wedding, it read, "I'm worried he knows. I don't feel safe." The message suggested Emily had sensed danger, perhaps aware that Daniel had uncovered her past. Detectives scrambled to investigate Ryan's role. But security footage from the inn confirmed Daniel's midnight errand, ruling out Ryan's presence at the scene. Ryan claimed he had come to town to check on Emily, prompted by a cryptic voicemail she left weeks earlier. The voicemail recovered from his phone was garbled but carried her voice, trembling with fear. The email and receipt briefly shifted. Suspicion, with some wondering if Ryan had acted out of jealousy or revenge. But the evidence against Daniel was overwhelming. A final search of his home uncovered a hidden journal tucked behind a loose panel in his garage. Its pages revealed a chilling obsession. Daniel had written about Emily's deception, detailing his plan to confront her on their wedding. One entry dated a month before the wedding read, "She must pay for her lies, to cleanse the bond we made." Another described the rose petal, a symbol of the purity he believed she had betrayed. The journal's final page, written the day before the ceremony, spoke of a reckoning, its words underlined with force. The prosecution presented the journal as the final nail in Daniel's coffin, proof of his premeditated intent. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before delivering a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder. Daniel was sentenced to life, without parole, his face impassive as the gavel fell. Willow Creek exhaled, but the wound remained raw. Emily's classroom became a memorial, its walls adorned with her students' artwork. The Rosewood enclosed its doors, its owners unable to shake the tragedy's stigma. Ryan Keller left town, his brief return a lingering question mark. Some believed he had tried to warn Emily, while others saw him as a ghost from her past, stirring trouble without intent. The anonymous letters were never traced, their author a shadow in the town's history. Daniel's journal offered a glimpse into a mind consumed by control, where love was a contract and deviation was unforgivable. The rose petal, preserved in evidence, became a symbol of his twisted ritual, a marker of the moment he claimed Emily's life. Willow Creek changed in the aftermath, its innocence tarnished. Grace Harper moved away, unable to bear the memories. The meadow where Emily and Daniel had wed grew wild, its roses overtaken by weeds. The case left a legacy of questions. Had Emily's secret been her undoing, or was Daniel's obsession inevitable? As the town mourned, one truth stood clear, and the brightest days can hide the darkest truths.